Good day to you all. Welcome to Metric Hub. Today I'm going to focus on communication info, module 3, organizational communication. Organizational communication. Right, I'm going to discuss organizational communication. Organizational communication. Right. So I'm going to define what is organizational communication. Right. Organizational communication is communication that is used by management and employees in the business or in the organization to achieve what? Organizational goals. So in an organization, there is communication that is being done so that goals will be achieved, right? So organizational communication, in other words, it is communication within an organization, communication within an organization. That's what we call organizational communication. Communication within an organization. So it is communication used by management and employees in the business to achieve goals, right? In an organization, in order to achieve goals, there should be communication between management and employees. There should be communication between management and employees. So I'm going to give examples of organizational communication. You can find that in an organization, the manager might use an intercom to announce, to make announcements. Might use intercom to make an announcement, right, to the employees. Or you can use a notice board to give notice. Management and staff might also meet. They can have a meeting. That's also communication. Communication through meetings. There are many meetings that can be done or held within an organization. We also call it what? Organizational communication. It is called organizational communication. Communication within an organization. Communication which takes place in an organization. That's what we call organizational communication. All right. So I'm going to move on to different channels of communication within an organization. Different channels of communication within an organization. You can find that in an organization, there are different channels of communication that are used in order to achieve organizational goals, right? So I'm going to discuss channels of communication. I'll be discussing channels of communication. So the first channel that I'm going to discuss is what you call a vertical communication. Vertical communication, right? You remember a vertical line. It is up and down. It is up and down. That's what you call a vertical line. So we have what you call downwards, right? Downwards communication and upwards communication, right? Downwards communication. This is a downward arrow. And then this one is an upward arrow that might also represent what? Upwards communication. Upwards communication. Upwards communication, right? So we have two forms of vertical communication. So I'm going to start by discussing downwards communication. Downwards communication, right? So downwards communication is when, right, in an organizational structure, this is a simple organizational structure whereby we have the CEO and then group of what? Group of managers. These are the managers in different levels. And then there's also supervisors in an organization. You can find that there are supervisors, right? Supervisors. And then lastly, we have employees or general workers. These are the general workers, workers, right? So downwards communication is when management is communicating with the employees. That's what you call a general downward communication. When the higher level management, this is the highest level, this is the highest level management, this one is the lowest level management, right? So when a higher level management is communicating to a lower level management, we call it downwards communication. We call it downwards communication. So downwards communication, it is when a higher level management is communicating with a lower level management. So I'm going to give examples of downwards communication. For example, supervisor giving instructions to employees, that's a downwards, right? Downward communication. Manager explaining about the policy to the organization, right? The manager is here, is on this level. So you'll be communicating to the supervisors and the employees. We call it downwards communication. Downwards communication. Right? When a higher level management, right, the CEO is communicating with the lower level manager. For example, the CEO can communicate, can give instructions to the managers, right? Or the managers, they can also give instructions or orders to the supervisors, right? That's what you call a downwards communication. Downwards communication, right? I'm going to move on to another form of vertical communication, which is what you call upwards communication. Upwards communication, right? Upwards communication, right? Just I'm going to draw a simple organizational structure here, like the one I've drawn below, above, like the one that I've drawn above, right? Uh, right? I'm going to explain upwards communication, right? So you can find that there is a higher level management, highest level. It might be the MD, managing director, and then followed by a group of managers, followed by the group of managers, right, in different departments. And then after that, you can find that we have also first line or operational management, which are supervisors or foremen, right? And then down we have employees or general workers, right? General workers. You just call them workers. They are workers, right? So you can find that communication can move from a lower level management, to a higher level management. When communication move from a lower level management to the highest level management, we call it upwards communication. We call it upwards communication. When communication moves from a higher level to the lower level, we call it what? Upwards communication, right? So, for example, uh, the manager can give feedback, right, to the manager, to the managing director, and also the manager, the supervisor can also give suggestions or opinions to the manager. And you can find that workers can also give a report, right, to the supervisor. We call it upwards communication. When communication moves from a higher level to a lower level management, we call it what? Upwards communication, right? Upwards communication. It flows from communication flows from a lower level to a higher level. For example, they might maybe want to inquire about something. They also can want to make suggestion, or they want to what? To give feedback reports. To give feedback reports. That's what you call upwards communication. Upwards communication. Right. I'm going to move on to another type of what? Another channel of communication, which is what you call horizontal communication. Horizontal communication, right? So it is when employees of the same level of authority are communicating when they are employees across departments who are at the same level are communicating. That meaning to say, if the employees are on the same level, for example, managers can have a brainstorming sessions as managers. We call it what? Horizontal communication, right? Our supervisors in different departments, they can also have a brainstorming. Managers can also do what you call problem solving, right? That's downwards communication. That's downwards communication. So that's horizontal communication, right? So I'm going to move on to another type of communication, which is what you call diagonal. Diagonal communication. Diagonal communication, meaning to say it does not takes place across the normal channels of communication, right? For example, communication takes place across different levels of authority, right? Communication takes place across different levels of authority, right? We can find that we have the CEO, right? And then managers in different departments. Right. So that's what, so I'm going to draw a formal organizational structure here so that I can be able to explain diagonal communication. So you can find that, for example, we have finance manager, you have the HR manager here, there is production manager, and sales, sales manager, right? Under these managers, we can find that there are supervisors in different departments, right? Supervisors, right? And then lastly, we have lowest level, which are workers. Which are workers? We have workers under the supervisor, workers who are working under the supervisor, right? So we can find that the workers, right, in the HR department can have a meeting with the production manager, workers with the production manager and the sales supervisor. So it is a zigzag pattern type of uh, communication channel, right? Employees uh, of different levels of authority and different departments, they can also communicate with each other. For example, the marketing manager may ask the supervisor or maybe the assistant public manager to proofread the advertisement and advert. Right? That's what we call diagonal communication. So I'm going to move on to another type of communication, which is what you call group small group communication, that we call it, they're also called quality circles. They're also called quality circles, right? So this one, it involves the establishment of committees, right? In an organization, you can find that we have different types of committee: occupational health and safety committee, workers committee, workplace forum committees. Right? These committees, they also communicate. It is also another channel of communication because members, they communicate within an organization. They can communicate within an organization. For example, health and safety, they can communicate or safety measures or safety precautions, safety issues within an organization. Right. I'm going to move on to the other type of um, communication channel of communication, which is what you call informal organization. Informal organization. So this one rely heavily on grapevine. You can find that examples include rumors, gossips. Right? So this type of communication can spread faster than formal channels of communication. This type of communication can spread very fast than formal communication. And also within an organization, there is what you call external communication, meaning to say the organization can communicate with its stakeholders, communicate with its stakeholders, right? The organization can communicate with its stakeholders. Stakeholders includes the suppliers, the customers, the shareholders, the media, etc. Right. So external communication is when the organization is communicating with the outside world. When the organization is communicating with the outside world, the stakeholders, those people who are interested in the operation of the business. For example, the organization might want to borrow maybe raw materials on credit, or maybe to order raw materials on credit, right? So they have to communicate with the suppliers so that they can be granted those that requirement, right? So that's what we call external communication. External communication, right? Right. So let's move on to types of organizations. Types of organizations, right? We have what we call a line organization. A line organization, which is the simplest form of what? Of an organization. So this one is normally used when you are operating a small business. A small business. So here, authority will be in the form of instructions, all right, from the what? From the manager to the subordinates. Authority and decision making comes from the what? The manager. So the manager is the one who will make decisions regarding the organization. He will make the decisions regarding the organization. So we're talking about this type of organization is suitable for maybe a small bakery, a small butcher, right? Whereby there's a manager and and employees. Small it is ideal for a small business, right? So um a simple it is very simple to form, whereby we can see that there's a manager here, there is a manager, and then after that you can find that there are employees, there are employees they are employees reporting to the manager. They are employees reporting to the manager. These are the employees. So that's what the structure looks like. Right. The, the line organization. The manager will be giving instructions, authorities in the form of what? Instructions and orders. Instructions and orders. Right. So let's move on to another type of what? Of, before we talk about another type of organizational, formal organization. All right. You can find that we can talk about what advantages of what line organization. It is very simple to understand. You can find that it is very easy for a person to identify the person who is responsible for it, right? And you can find that uncertainties can be resolved easily. Decision making is quick since the manager is the one who will be making all decisions. Instructions can be carried immediately because there is no supervisory management, right? So the manager will just give instructions, employees will work according to the instructions. So the conflicts are kept at a minimum. You can find that conflict is minimized, all right, within a line organization. Conflict is minimized within a line organization. Right. So let's move on to disadvantages of uh, a, a line organization, right? So a line organization it is not suitable for growing business. can find that if the business is growing, it will be very difficult for one person to manage or to make decisions, né? Right? So it is not suitable for, because decision becomes what it will the decision will be making will be slowed down, right? Since the business is growing, right? And also you can find that the process of carrying instructions becomes too slow, right? The manager is the only one who gains experience since he's the one who wear many hats. You'll be the finance, you do finance, recruiting, uh, sales and marketing. So he gains a lot of what experience, right? And then it might also result to ineffective management since a manager might not be good at maybe other areas. For example, he might not be good at finance, so it will maybe result in what ineffective management. And you can find that there is no suitable replacement since the manager is the one who will be doing the work. There's no one to replace the manager since employees will not have experience, right? So this type of organization can lead to autocratic management. It can lead to autocratic management, right? So I'm going to move on to the other uh, types of what? Type of what? Of organization. We have what you call a line and staff organization. Line and staff organization. So here it is a line organization with staff assistant who are specialists in various areas added to the structure. Right? A specialist or an assistant is added to a line organization, right? So the specialist normally provide advice to the manager. So he forms what you call an advisor relationship with the manager. So it is not their function to give instructions. They just what? Give advice, right? So they will help the manager to make decisions, right, in a specific field. Their duty is to provide advice, but they cannot give instructions to the manager to do something, right? So let's talk about this type of organization. You can find that it allows managers to access to specialized knowledge. The manager will be having more knowledge or might have a vast of what? Of knowledge because there is an expert or a specialist who is assisting him in managing the business, right? And then you can find that the department can be managed more effectively. The department can be managed more effectively because there's someone who is within the organization who will have a specialized what experience, who is specialized, who is a specialist, who will be able to provide effective decisions for the organization, and the organization becomes more effective. It becomes more effective, right? Let's move on to a disadvantages of what? Of line and staff management. You can find that staff assistant may forget their role. Their role is just to give advice. But what do? They might not, they might want to enforce it. So this might result to conflict, confusion, and frustration within the organization. For example, they might give instructions to the employees. That might also create conflict with the what? With the manager, right? And decision making is usually slowed down, right? It is usually slowed down because the staff assistant is called to give what? Advice, right? We need to call him before we make a decision. The staff assistant has to come in and give the advice, right? So this is the line and organizational structure will look like this. Line on and staff structure will look like this. Right. So there is a manager, right? After the manager, you can find that there's a management assistant, management assistant, management assistant, right? who will assist the manager in making decisions, And then lastly, there are workers in the organization. They are general workers or employees within an organization. So the staff assistant, as I have said earlier, that this staff is there to give advice, to the manager. He give advice to the manager regarding a specific um, field. He will give advice regarding a specific field. He will give advice to the manager. He gives advice regarding to a specific field. He gives advice. He gives advice, but he cannot enforce the advice. All right. He gives the advice to the manager. All right. But he cannot or enforce it, right? He cannot give orders or he cannot give instructions, right? So I'm going to move on to the last organizational structure, which is what we call a functional organization. Functional organization, right? It is when a manager is an expert in his field, he can give instructions to employees and managers in other departments regarding his area of experience. So this allows specialist decision making to be implemented, right? The manager is a specialist. So because of his expertise, right, in a specific field, he can also give advice, give instructions to employees and managers in other department, which is apart from his department. For example, an HR manager can give, right, I'm just gonna draw the structure here, just a simple organizational structure, right? A simple organizational structure, production manager, HR, public relations, right? Public relations manager, right? So you can find that under the managers, we have supervisors, 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 right? Under supervisors, we have what? Workers, workers in different departments. We have workers in different departments. Right? So you can find that the HR manager, for example, is a specialist in what? In training and development. Is specialist in training and development. Specialist in training and development, right? So what does he do? Because he is an expert in what? In training and development. He can give training advice to employees in different departments. He can give training advice. He can also give training instructions to different departments. He can give training instructions to the production department, to the finance department, and to the public relations department, because he's an expert. Right? So he can give instructions to employees and managers in other departments regarding his field of expertise, right? So this can allow specialist decisions, right, to be implemented. So what about disadvantages of this type of organization? You can find that employees may be given orders from more than one person, which can lead to conflict. They can receive instructions to to the manager who is the manager in their department, and also another manager who is maybe an expert in his field regarding maybe a certain expertise. So he will receive maybe orders from more than more than one person. That might also lead to what? To conflict. That might also lead to conflict. So I'm going to end here. Thank you so much for your time. Please don't forget to hit the subscription button, and then you see every time when I post. Have a good day.